This episode was originally published in November of 2025.
This is Kent Hance, best storyteller in Texas, and we have an outstanding member of Congress, Brandon Gill, is going to be our member we talked to today. He represents a 26th congressional district that was previously well represented by Michael Burgess, and now it's still well represented by a gentleman that was born in Clovis, New Mexico, 60 miles from Dinesh, Texas, where I was born. And his dad was in the Air Force. Then he was raised on a ranch near Abilene and went to Dartmouth. And then after that, was an investment banker, and then headed up a publication and decided to move back to Texas. And he moved back to Texas and ran for Congress, was elected with 58% of the vote, despite having 10 other opponents. And I've never heard of anyone having that many opponents and winning without a runoff. Congratulations on that victory. And we appreciate you being here this morning, Congressman, and well, hope things are going well for you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
We have different months. A couple of months ago, we had 39,000 hits and followers. And so you'll have a broad group across the country and some around the world. I had one guy in Bangladesh. I was looking at, I don't know what one guy in Bangladesh was doing listening to my podcast, but maybe he's a displaced Texan and wanted to hear something.
Interesting man in the world.
Yeah. Let's talk about the closing, a shutdown of the government. When will that be through? And a lot of people say things to us, well, the Republicans got control of the House and Senate, whether they just passed something. Well, it's not that easy, and you want to explain to the public, what the real vote is, especially in the Senate.
Sure. Yeah. And to your question, when are we going to get out of this? We're going to get out of this whenever Democrats decide that they're not going to keep the government shut down in order to give health care benefits to illegal aliens. You hear a lot of people talk about, well, Republicans are in control of the House, we're in control of the Senate, we have the White House. Why can't we just pass a budget? And to your point, think of how a normal bill gets passed, including a budget. You need a simple majority in the House, but you need 60 votes in the Senate, meaning you need a supermajority. Right now, Republicans have 53 seats, so we have to have some Democrats cross the aisle and work with us to get a budget passed, to get it to the president's desk so that we can keep the government open or reopen the government. So that's why we're in this position right now. Remember, we've known about this budget deadline for months and months. We knew that September 30th was the end of last fiscal year. That's when appropriations begin to lapse after that point, and we had to cut a deal before then. So House Republicans passed what's called a clean continuing resolution, meaning we didn't add a bunch of Republican or conservative priorities into it. It's just continuing to fund the government for another 7 weeks, the same way we've been doing it for the past several months. It's a bill that Democrats voted for 13 times under President President Biden, including one time earlier this year, back in March. So this is something Democrats should have gone for, but instead of taking the responsible path, working with us to keep the government open, they decided that they were going to shut the government down, hold the American people hostage so that they can push for healthcare benefits for illegal aliens, funding for state-sponsored media outlets like NPR and PBS, and a variety of other left-wing programs. So I hope that we come out of this soon, but that's where we're at.
Is there any indication that this might end in the next couple of weeks? At what point, it's been obvious that Schumer and a lot of the Democrats think that this helps them. And really, the big fight is over, y'all don't want to extend Obama health care benefits to illegal aliens. And That appears to me that's the big fight, and that they want to extend it.
That's exactly what the big fight is. Listen, earlier this summer, we passed the Working Families Tax Cut Bill, which was the one big beautiful bill, and part of that was some stipulations that House Republicans put into that legislation, saying that we're not going to pay for illegal aliens to be on SNAP or food stamps or on Medicaid or any welfare program. Democrats want to undo all of that as part of, again, a 7-week continuing resolution. The purpose of this continuing resolution was simply to keep the federal government open for 7 weeks so that we could run the regular appropriations process and fund the government the way it's supposed to be funded, which is how Congress is supposed to work, which is we go through individual appropriations bills where we can look line by line at where federal tax dollars are going and we can vote on it. That's exercising Congress's primary constitutional duty, which is the power of the purse. Unfortunately, Washington hasn't worked like that in quite some time, so we're trying to get back to that. And in order to do that, we needed to just keep the government open. Democrats wanted to undo all of the healthcare reforms that we put into place so that they could give welfare benefits, including Medicaid and healthcare, to illegal aliens. But they also wanted to fund NPR and PBS to far left news outlets who basically run cover for Democrats and attack Republicans as a matter of routine practice. So we said, listen, what we did was responsible. It's something that you guys have supported in the past. It's common sense. It's not political. And you guys, this is something you voted for in the past. So work with us to help the American people. And what you're hearing from Democrats now is talking about how they've got leverage because they're using the pain of the American people as negotiating leverage against Democrats. It's really grotesque.
They seem to think that that's to their benefit, and I guess it remains to be seen. But this will be close elections, midterm elections always are, and but a lot of my friends in the Republican Party feel like that they may be even able to pick up seats rather than lose seats. And what's happening in the political campaigns?
Yeah, historically, you would say that any party that has the White House and control of the House right now would lose majority. That's what happens, 8, 9 times out of 10 historically. I think that we're at a really, really strong position right now, though I think we're going to actually keep the House and probably pick up a few seats. And here's why. It's because right now, if you look at what messaging on both sides of the aisle looks like, Republicans, we have strong leadership in the White House, in the cabinet. We've got strong congressional leadership. We've got a message. We've got real results that we've delivered for the American people this entire year, cutting taxes, cutting regulations, biggest welfare reform, getting illegal aliens, for instance, off of Medicaid, cutting spending. I mean, we've done so many things that we were elected to do. Look at what President Trump has done. He's got the economy back on track, brought inflation down. He secured the border with after only a few weeks of getting in office. You're getting peace deals all over the world. I mean, these are huge wins. And if you contrast that with what the Democrats have done for the past 9 months, what do they have to show for their time? Basically, Democrats have accomplished nothing in the past 9 months except for shutting the government down. That's a stark contrast between the two parties. On top of that, Democrats have virtually no leadership. Their leadership now is Jasmine Crockett and AOC, and now Zoran Mamdani, who's running for mayor in New York and is probably going to be the first communist Islamist mayor of that city. So that's where the Democrat Party is. That is wildly unpopular with the American people. So I think that the setup for us looks really good politically. The American people still stand with President Trump on immigration, on the economy, on most issues that people tend to vote on. On top of that, let me say one last thing here is if you look at the map across the country, there are far more Democrats in congressional districts that President Trump won than there are Republicans in congressional districts that Kamala Harris won. In other words, there are pickup opportunities across the country. This is an offensive map for Republicans to pick up seats. So I feel great about where Republicans are. I think our goal should be just to keep the pedal to the floor in delivering for the people.
Congressman Richard Hudson heads up the campaign committee for y'all, and
Yep.
he worked for Congressman Conaway from
Mhm.
Midland at one time, and he's a member of Congress from North Carolina, and he really has done an outstanding job of
Yes, he
focusing
has.
on raising the money that would be needed.
Oh, Richard Hudson over at the NRCC has done a fantastic job of politically leading the party, putting us in a good position, I think, again, to pick up more seats in the House. We've been fundraising well. That fundraising matters whenever you're looking at elections, and House Republicans, in many cases, are out fundraising our Democrat opponents by a pretty good margin. So that's another reason to look at that this is a good map for us. It should be a very good political cycle.
Going back to earlier, we had talked about you were born in Clovis, New Mexico, at Cannon Air Force Base, and your dad was a officer there. What was he, a pilot and an officer, and what was his
Yep.
position?
My dad was an officer in the Air Force. He was a fighter pilot. He flew F-111s, was stationed in Europe for a little bit, and then at Cannon Air Force Base, where I was born.
Now, after your dad left, y'all moved to Abilene, a big country area out there,
Yep,
and then
that's right.
you graduated from high school. Where?
At a school called Eula High School. I graduated in a class of 24 students. It's a small rural public school outside of Abilene.
Eula. And that's one that's gotten by me. I've been to Baird and a few places like that, not far removed from Eula. But Eula's
Yep,
population's of what, about 250, 300 people?
that's exactly right. Not far from Baird. Baird was one of our sort of rival high schools growing up. We're probably 15 minutes away, but Eula is there. It's not a town. There's no post office there. So it's technically a community of about 300 people, 300 to 400, I believe.
What? And then you went to Dartmouth. What made you decide on Dartmouth? And that's not an easy school to get into, and probably the most conservative of all the Ivy League schools. Might be the only one that has some conservative students in it.
It's the most conservative of the Ivies, but that's not saying much. Um, listen, I wanted to get the best education that I could whenever I was in high school, and I was a pretty serious athlete, and I was a pole vaulter on the track team, and I ended up getting recruited up at Dartmouth and a few other schools, and visited the campus, loved it, knew that would be a great place for me to, see the world, get the best education I possibly could. So, loved the place. And, I spent 4 years there. I studied economics and history, but more importantly, I met my wife at Dartmouth. She's a year younger than I am. And we met through a Christian ministry on campus, as well as some conservative organizations that we both worked with. So met her there and got married soon after. So I would say it was a success.
Is a great success. What and when you left Dartmouth, you had been editor of the conservative paper there at Dartmouth. And how was that? How did you get that position?
So I was president of a newspaper called the Dartmouth Review, which is the sort of rabble-rousing college conservative newspaper at Dartmouth. I believe it was the first conservative college newspaper in the country. It was founded in 1980, kind of right at the beginning of the Reagan Revolution. And it's a newspaper that I worked with a lot. A lot of my friends from college were in it. We would hang out together. It was nice to have a small group of like-minded people that you could talk to and hang out with, especially when you're on a campus as far left as Dartmouth was and is. So it's nice to have that community. But got really involved with it. Wanted to lead the paper. Like I said, I was president of it. We ran a lot of the publishing and business side operations of the paper, and had a great time and met some very close friends from doing that.
You still stayed in touch with most of those people.
That's right. We definitely do. Those are our, whenever you're in on a liberal campus like that, and you're, one of only a handful of conservatives, you tend to get pretty close. You tend to bond quite a bit over that.
Right. Did any of those people help you when you decided to run for Congress?
um, some of them did. A lot of my buddies in the Dartmouth Review are kind of all over. All over. Some of them, one of them actually is on the editorial board of the Wall Street Journal. Many of them are in finance, working at private equity funds or hedge funds or investment banks or whatever. And others are everywhere in between. So they're kind of all over the country. And I would say they were definitely supportive to the extent that they could. And again, a very good network to have.
That's great. You won the congressional race, and I mentioned it earlier. You got 58% of the vote, and there were 10 other people in the race. That's just unheard of. And how did you do that? And what kind of spread did you have starting the campaign? And we know the result, but
Mhm.
when you first started, Brandon Gill wasn't a household name in the 26th district.
No, I was anything but a household name whenever we first got started. I imagine I was polling in the low single digits, if anything. So, listen, we came in strong, and I think what the district was looking for, Texas 26 was looking for, was somebody who was going to be a bold conservative in Washington, who was going to stand up for the people's values and stand against the swamp. And that's what I have been trying to do ever since getting into office. I think that they were looking for somebody who was going to fight back against the left, fight back against all of the radical, weird, woke things the left has been shoving down our throats, fight to secure the border, to deport illegal aliens, to get the economy back on track, and to work with President Trump to do all of those things. Remember, whenever I was running, Joe Biden was still in the White House. I think we felt pretty good about what the presidential race was going to look like, but I think the district was looking for somebody who would stand with President Trump and fight alongside him and support him. And that's what I've tried to do. Listen, you see all of the good things that have come out of Washington, and we have excellent leadership in the House with Mike Johnson, and the rest of the leadership team. Really couldn't speak too highly of Mike. He's done a phenomenal job. But we also have a great president, who is the leader of the party. He's the ideological leader. He's the movement leader. And I think that Texas 26 wanted somebody who would support him. So that's what I promised to do. To your point, we had 11 of us total in the primary. And remember, in a district like Texas 26, this is a conservative Republican district. So the primary really is kind of the most important race between the primary and the general. So got in. The president endorsed me fairly early on. We were able to get out we had, probably well over a dozen debates or forums all over the district. Got to meet all of the grassroots, all of the local business leaders, and everybody in between. So just put the pedal to the floor, and whenever the results came out, we were up with 58% of the vote.
That's just unheard of, and you ran an outstanding race. Let's talk a minute about your committee assignment, your own judiciary. And
Mhm.
there's always going to be, they want to put some non-lawyers on the judiciary. And you got one of those spots. That's a great committee. And then on oversight, you got on the oversight committee. And then there's a new committee created that you got on, the DOGE committee. Let's talk about that just a moment. How did you get on that?
Sure. So, whenever you first get into Washington after getting elected, the first question everybody asks you is what committees do you want to be on? And you end up you kind of look at what you may think you're good at, where you think you may be able to contribute, and you basically end up telling what's called the steering committee what committees you hope to be on. And I wanted to be on judiciary oversight, and I'm also on the budget committee as well with Chairman Arrington. And you kind of run you run another campaign. You lobby the steering committee, tell them here's why I should be on judiciary and oversight, or whatever you're wanting to do, and they end up choosing. But what I was wanting to do coming in is I'm a big fan of Chairman Jim Jordan, who's the head of the Judiciary Committee. I wanted to work under him. I've seen the work that he's done on the committee with a variety of congressional investigations, especially over the last 2 to 4 years. And I wanted to work with him on that, whether it was free speech or going after government corruption or government weaponization. I wanted to be there alongside him. So that was one of the top committee choices for me. And since then, I think that we've been able to get a lot done. The DOJ subcommittee was unique because that is to your point, a new subcommittee. It didn't exist until this Congress. It's just a subcommittee of oversight. And one of the things that I ran on was rationalizing government spending. And I think that was a big part of this past election cycle, all the way up to the presidential ticket, is the American people seeing that there is an enormous amount of waste, fraud, and abuse in the federal government. And if we're going to get the debt under control, if we're going to rein in the federal government and keep it within its constitutional bounds, that's the first place to start. So I wanted to be part of the DOJ subcommittee so that I could be intimately involved in that process. And I think we've gotten a lot done. We got our first rescission bill passed earlier this year, where we clawed back $13 billion in discretionary spending that was being given to NPR, PBS, and a variety of left-wing social programs over at the State Department. That was a huge win for us. And in preparation for that, we had a variety of hearings. We talked to the head of NPR and PBS, to various people associated with USAID. So it's been a great time. It's been it's exciting because we've been able to be effective. But those are what I wanted to do coming in, was be in the places where the action was, and judiciary and oversight, or where the action is.
Well, it's really been the action. I would mention to you on this same program, we had Jody Arrington this summer. He speaks highly of you and your future in the House. And Jody, when I was chancellor at Texas Tech, was my chief of staff for 5 years. And
Yep.
so he's been a dear friend. You had a video of you questioning the people that were in charge of NPR and PBS. And let's talk about that. It went viral. I mean, it was everywhere. And
Mhm.
it explained a little about what was happening, what the committee was doing, what you were trying to find out, and how that became such a hot number that everybody wanted to watch it.
Sure. So this was a hearing that the DOJ subcommittee was having. And the question was, should we continue funding left-wing media outlets like NPR and PBS? And in order to answer that question, we wanted to bring the heads of those outlets before Congress for a committee hearing. And the way these hearings work is you bring in these witnesses, Catherine Marr, head of NPR, being one of them, and they sit before Congress, they swear an oath to tell the truth, and then everybody who's a member of that committee has 5 minutes to ask questions to the witnesses. And the way they do it is they go in order of seniority, meaning the most senior congressmen go first, and then the most junior ones, like the freshmen like me, go last. So whenever we're doing these committees, I always realize that because I'm at the very bottom, I go after 30 other people have asked questions. I've got to get more creative in what I'm going to ask, so that I'm not asking the witnesses the same questions everybody else has, for the 10th or 11th time. But remember, this hearing in particular was probably one of the more high profile hearings. Defunding
Absolutely.
impeachment.
I watched it, and I was waiting to see what you were going to do, because when you're at the bottom of the list,
Mm-mm.
Everybody, you have all these questions you're ready to ask, and by the time they get to you, you look and they've already asked all of them. So you have to be very creative. And I was really impressed with the way you handled it. And most of the members told me, if it was a group with NPR, PBS, if if they were balanced and fair and tried to present both sides, they probably would have escaped. But they did not escape uh, your question and bring us up to that point and tell us about what happened from the time you started asking questions.
Sure. So I wanted to ask Catherine Marr, basically, what are you using our tax dollars? What are the values you're using our tax dollars to promote? So what we did is we went through all of Catherine Marr's public statements, her Twitter account, and I decided I would just ask her about them. Just very simply, they're kind of black and white questions. For instance, I asked Catherine Marr, do you believe that America is addicted to white supremacy? And it sounds like a crazy question, but that's what she wrote verbatim on her Twitter account just a few short years ago. So I asked her, Miss Marr, do you believe that America's addicted to white supremacy? She said, of course not. I've never said that. I said, well, actually, yes, you did. And I read her tweet back to her where she said exactly that. Asked her about whether she believes in race-based reparations. And she said, no, of course not. I've never said that. I said, actually, yes, you did. And I read her tweet back to her where she was advocating for race-based reparations. She was promoting a book called "The Case for Reparations," something she claimed in our committee hearing that she had never read. Well, it turns out, according to her own Twitter account that she wrote, she took a whole day off of work to read this book. And I just asked her about all of these things, and it's really simple. It's just saying, you're the head of a state-sponsored media outlet. You receive tax dollars. I pay, taxpayers pay your salary. So I want to know what are the values that you're promoting and you're using our state-sponsored media outlets to promote. It's very simple. All we did is just ask them in a black and white way. You don't have to get upset with them. Don't have to, get angry. All it is just asking them what they believe, and they realize, and Catherine Marr realizes that she can't be straightforward about her beliefs because the majority of Americans in this country find her beliefs about race, about gender, the weird woke stuff to be utterly repulsive. So she didn't want to be straightforward with us in the committee hearing. She conveniently couldn't remember anything, and we were able to call her on it.
Well, it was a hearing that did go viral, and I'm sure you got a lot of questions from others, but I'm sure you got a lot of support and some probably harsh enemies to attack you for asking those questions.
And we got everything, all of the above. That's right. It was the funny thing about that was a high stakes hearing for NPR and for Catherine Marr because we were talking about pulling back over $500 million in funding every single year from them and from PBS. So she should have been very well prepared for that hearing. In fact, she had an army of lawyers sitting right behind her the entire time who clearly had spent some time prepping her for the hearing, and yet she came woefully unprepared without having even gone into any of her public statements or refreshed herself on it or what. So she had it coming to her. NPR had it coming to them. I mean, these are news outlets that run articles about fat phobia and transgender dinosaurs. I mean, I wish I was making that up, but that is the kind of stuff that NPR promotes. But I think most of my colleagues that I'm aware of on the Republican side were really happy with how the hearing went. In fact, I heard from several of my colleagues who said that they were initially skeptical of defunding NPR and PBS, but after watching our hearing and that line of questioning, they said there's no way I could vote to give them money after that because we exposed them so thoroughly and realized there's no way they deserve taxpayer dollars. So those hearings make a difference. They have a real impact in getting legislation ultimately across the finish line, and that was the goal of the hearing, and I think we were able to do it.
Do you have any of the worst examples of money that they were spending on the other items?
Yep. Well, I can tell you some of the things even right now that Democrats are wanting to spend money on. Some of the demands include $4 million for global LGBTQ programs, another $4 million for LGBTQ programs specifically in the Balkans. There are about $2 million in feminist programs in foreign countries. But whenever you look at that's just what Democrats are wanting to spend right now, by the way. Those are part of their demands that they're forcing on us to reopen the government that we're saying no to. But whenever you look at what we defunded in the rescission bill earlier this year, some of the State Department programs, the USAID programs, there was $2 million, several $1 million of DEI scholarships in Eastern Europe. There was millions of dollars of green energy projects in sub-Saharan Africa, tens of millions of dollars of condoms going to Mozambique. There were transgender surgeries being funded in Latin America. We were spending hundreds of thousands of dollars promoting atheism in Nepal. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And they're programs that, if you didn't know any better, they're almost funny because they're so crazy. They're so delusional. There's something that it's just hard to believe this is real, but it is. That's what our tax dollars were funding.
Well, you were working hard to stop that, and I think you had a lot of the American public was certainly on your side, and it was very entertaining. What's been the top
Yeah.
issues that y'all have taken up in judiciary that you have worked on?
Yep. So the Judiciary Committee basically it looks after a wide range of political issues. Most social issues, immigration, guns, pro-life, all of that runs through the Judiciary Committee. But one of the things that we've spent a lot of time on, and the committee has even before I was there, is on weaponization of government. So seeing that the federal government under Joe Biden going after pro-lifers and traditional Catholics and moms who didn't want, weird social agendas shoved onto their children in public schools. And you saw that the Biden FBI and the DOJ going after their political enemies with kind of a ruthlessness that I think was new to American politics in many ways, at least at that scale. So that's one of the things we've spent a lot of time on is trying to investigate what exactly happened with the federal government being weaponized against conservatives under the Biden regime. But we spent a lot of time on immigration as well. That's a very important issue to me. I think that was the most important issue of the past election cycle is border security and immigration. So we are part of, for instance, the big beautiful bill which we passed out of Congress and was signed into law earlier this summer was about immigration there. It was about providing funding for the border wall, for river barriers, for more ICE agents, for more DHS agents, for the logistical infrastructure needed to deport illegal aliens. All of those components of the big beautiful bill that we passed came out of the Judiciary Committee that we worked on.
Well, that's been a busy committee, and Chairman Jordan does an outstanding job in keeping everyone focused and moving in the right direction, in my opinion.
Yep,
I
he
think.
certainly does.
Let's talk a little about your wife. She was at a Dallas reception earlier this year that I met her and was very impressed. And she was attending Dartmouth at the same time you were. And where did she grow up?
She grew up in Southern California, outside of San Diego. And, like, as you said, ended up going to Dartmouth on the other side of the country, which is where we met.
Her dad is famous in his own rights,
Yep.
and you've been close to him. Tell us a
Mhm.
little about how he is and what he's like.
Sure. Well, Dinesh D'Souza is his name, and he is a kind of a political mentor of mine. I would say, first and foremost, more of a scholar. Whenever you think of him in the political world, he's somebody that if you go up to him and you ask him about any question about history or philosophy or government, he'll be able to lecture for hours. Go up to him and ask him about some political controversy in 12th century England, and he'll be able to talk to you in academic detail. You can go into any question like that. So very historically and philosophically rooted, but also somebody who's been engaged in the current political fights at a pretty high level. So he's somebody who's certainly a great father-in-law, somebody who makes for very interesting Christmas dinner discussions. But he's also a great grandfather to our two children as well.
That's great. I've seen a couple of his movies and everything, followed his career, and he has an outstanding career and is a very entertaining person.
Yep.
Anytime I hear him speak, I'm always impressed with his knowledge, and his grasp of issues is truly outstanding. So that means for a lot of discussion within your household. And what did your wife major in? What was her major at Dartmouth?
She studied history at Dartmouth, and I studied history and economics, so pretty closely related there.
That's good. Where did you meet her on campus?
We met, I think we first met in the middle of the green, which is, the big grassy area in the middle of campus. But, we got to know each other through Christian Union, which was a student ministry that we were both very involved in. And we would meet once a week and have Bible studies and things like that. That's where we really, really got to meet each other and got to know each other.
Well, it certainly worked. And Congressman, I know how busy you are. We really appreciate you coming on the program and talking about various issues and giving people a chance to understand what's going on with the shutdown of the government. And that we hope that things get worked out. But we appreciate your standing for your principles and not opening up all types of welfare programs to people that are here illegally, broke the law to come. And that's just not something that should be allowed.
That's exactly right. We're going to keep fighting. I hope that Democrats come to their senses quickly and realize that the pain that they're putting on the American people isn't worth welfare for illegal aliens, but the ball is in their court. But I really appreciate the time. It's always good to talk.
I appreciate you, and we'll be talking to you later. Thank you very much.
Sounds good. Thank you.